looks like we've got a good 10 plus people starting to come in now, which is awesome. Morning everyone. Today's going to be quite a fun little talk. It's going to be based off quite a lot of the research we did up in Cape York a few years ago with traditional owners up there. We were based in Cohen and Arakoon and doing marine turtle research on the beaches there. So we'll be going through a few of the turtle species we dealt with, as well as what we have in Australia and across the world as well. So be pretty awesome. Morning Mark, all the way from the States. Awesome mate, geez, it must be what, 8 or 9 o'clock over there. But yeah, it'll be a great fun little session today. We're going to show you heaps of videos, quite a few pictures, and we are just going to wait a couple more minutes before I start going through it and we'll take off. But today's session is going to be unreal. What I'll be doing is using my monitor just behind me there and putting up pictures and videos and just explaining things, how we worked with different things, what we did, what the picture means or what's going on in that picture. You should be able to see my mouse come across the screen every now and then. It's quite small, but hopefully we'll be able to use that to show you a few different things. Hey, morning Kyle. How are you in WA, mate? Hopefully all's good with mines and lockdowns and things. Nice. Alrighty. Hey, good morning Kylie from WA. Awesome with Zach, Ollie and Mila. Hey guys. I hope you're having fun in isolation and quiet time. It's a good time to chill out and watch some turtle videos for sure. Alright, let's get into it. So, for anyone that's just joined, today we're talking about turtles, mostly Australian turtles. In Australia we have 6 of the 7 species of sea turtle in the world. There's only one we don't have, which is over in South America. It's called the Kemp's Ridley. But I'll be going through the different species of sea turtle we have here. Please let me know if you can't hear or if you have any trouble seeing something or anything like that, and I'll do my best to make sure it's clear. Now, parents, later on in this session, we're going to be talking about animals digging up turtle nests a little bit, so there is a little bit of content there that can be a little bit sad. It's not particularly graphic. We'll be showing pictures of the nests being dug up, so turtle eggs out on the sand and that. And later on I might also show a picture of a turtle that's been chomped by a croc, just to show a few of the different things that we have out there. Now I've got some cool props to go through today as well. So we've got the Turtley Awesome Turtle just here. We're going to go through him and what a few of the things on his head are, which are really cool. So I've got 2 of those. I've got something secret to show you later, which I'm going to describe. But we've got some really cool props, some great videos and great pictures. Okay, yeah, no worries. Good on you, Nat. Alice the Bettles will be very proud, Mark. Emojis, you can ask questions if you like. It's totally fine. Alright, so let's start going through it. I'm just going to start with a map first. Actually, I'll show you a little bit of a mishap that I had while I was running turtle surveys one day. We may as well start with a funny story. So, alright, here we go. So what you see here is one day we were out on the beach. So this is the beach we used to run our turtle surveys at. When we started, we just had quads. This is Papa Aaron. Papa Aaron's quad here. It was broken down. So he was getting towed. You can see the rope here. He was actually getting towed by another bike. On the back of that bike was a guy taking some pictures. And if you have a look really closely in my hand here, you can just see there's a camera. I'm holding a camera. I thought it would be awesome to take a picture of Papa Aaron there getting towed on the beach. And I took my hands off the wheels for 1 second to take a photo of him. And we were only doing 20 k's an hour, hands off the wheels to take a picture, and the wheels just dug in. And geez, she flipped real quick. I was pretty alright. I held onto the camera and it was all good, but all I could hear was the lads in the front just laughing. They didn't stop laughing for ages, and they found out they got a good photo because he was taking photos on burst on his iPhone. So this is how we used to run our turtle surveys, but eventually we got these really cool side-by-side quads where you could put everything in the back kind of like a ute, which was really awesome. So let's get into some turtle stuff. So this is Australia. I'll show you particularly where we were doing research, but we do have a lot of turtles all over Australia and throughout the world, mostly in tropical regions in warmer climates. They nest on beaches. So in Australia, we've got a lot of beautiful beaches, and quite a lot of populated areas have turtles nesting on the beaches as well, which does create a little bit of conflict for other reasons. So this is Australia. The area we were working in is up here in northern Queensland, in the top right to the northeast. If you can see just there, my cursor moving, we were working up in this region here. So that's Cape York. This larger triangle here is Cape York. Cairns is located just down here. So we were actually working on the west coast right here, which is really lovely. Beautiful area to work. Used to get west coast sunsets over the beach, which is phenomenal. If anyone's seen a west coast sunset in WA, yeah, it's just like that up in Cape York. Really beautiful. Now, so this is the area we were in. We were focusing on an area just here. Beautiful, lots of turtles, and found out that it was really, really important in the grand scheme of things. Now, scientists a few years ago predicted that sea turtles in Cape York might become extinct locally by 2030. So that's another 10 years from now. If we didn't do anything, this is the prediction they made about 10 years ago. So they said if we didn't do anything in 2010, by 2030, we might lose nesting turtles in Cape York locally. So that was one of the things we were really working towards, making sure we could reverse some of the cycle a little bit and make sure they could be nesting up there, and we weren't going to lose them, because it was really, really important nesting habitat in Cape York. Partly because it's remote and it's not heavily populated, which is really good. So this is some of our nesting data. We're going to just go through a couple of maps first, just so I can give you an idea on where we are. This is some of our nesting data over the years. If you look up the top, you can see the year. So I'm just going to remove that disclosure now, actually. So that's going to go, and then we'll clear things up. Beautiful. All right. Now, up the top, you can see the year. So 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, and we did a year in 2017 as well. So it was a 6-year study. In the first year, we were only looking at a small section of this beach, about 10 k's. Now, this beach that we were on in Cape York was 50 kilometres long. In our first year and 2013, first 2 years, we only did a sample of 10 k's of that beach. And that was just to get an idea of what was around. They're called baseline studies in terms of ecology. And so in 14, 15, 16 and 17, we actually expanded our study to 50 k's of the beach. It meant I was getting up at 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning, leaving camp to be on the beach while it was still dark, to drive all the way to the far end to work back. Otherwise, if you were on the beach there at 1 or 2 p.m. and you were trying to work, running up and back to turtle nests, digging turtle nests, stinky eggs all over you, it was pretty unpleasant at that time of the day. So we try to do all of our work earlier in the morning. The other thing, and I'll show you soon, is that the sunlight in the morning is a lot better because it casts shadows on the turtle tracks, which is a way that we were finding them. Good morning, Nikki, and good morning, everyone. Good morning, Violet, Jake, and Roman. Hey, Greg, and kids, and Cobbers. G'day, Cobbers. G'day, Bryony. Oh, I'll have to get that bearded dragon question later on. All right. So that was the area we were working in. I'm going to go to one more map here. This is just an idea on what we were using. How we had an iPad on the beach, and we would actually record where we found each nest. So on that 50k stretch of beach, we had about 500 nests. So pretty awesome. That's 10 nests a kilometre. And that was just phenomenal for that beach. So one of the best nesting populations there is in Cape York. All right, I'm going to skip some of the grass for now. Let's go into some of the fun stuff. So I'm going to play this video here. This is how we used to record our data. There we go. So you can see on here, there's a couple of nests here. I'm actually driving along to those. You can see my marker here. I'm driving along to check that nest there to see if it's hatched or what the status of it is, and at the same time looking for other nests as well. Alrighty. So let's go to some of the turtles. Awesome. Introduce you to this guy. This is an olive ridley. Olive Ridley turtle, he's a nice small turtle, very cute, very pretty, very placid. I'll show you a picture with someone in it in a minute so you can see the rough size of them. But he's a slightly smaller turtle, very pretty. So let's go a bit of background on turtles in general. Turtles are cold-blooded, so they're reptiles. They live most of their life, or all of their life, sorry, in the ocean, and then they come up onto the beach only to nest, that's it. So they don't do any feeding on the beach. All of their feeding is done in the water in the ocean, and their life cycle is quite interesting. So turtles will come up on the beach, they'll lay. The eggs will stay in the nest in incubation for about 60 days roughly. And then as one, all the hatchlings will come up through the sand, and then they'll burst down the beach into the ocean. And for 2 days straight, they'll swim perpendicular to the waves until they get right down to the ocean. They'll start feeding on little zooplankton out there, so tiny little animals. They'll start feeding on like shrimp, some algae, that kind of thing. Now, as they grow into juveniles and sub-adults, a lot of them migrate to different areas other than where they were actually hatched. And so loggerheads, for example, which are down at Monrepo near Bundaberg, so down south. Excuse folks, I'm just going to shut this window because we've got some roadworks and I don't want that extra noise coming in. Beauty. All right, so the loggerhead turtles down south near Bundaberg in Australia, just north of Brisbane, a little ways if you're not familiar with the area. Those turtles that lay on that beach there, it's quite a small beach, but heavily nested. Lots and lots of turtles go there to nest. And so they actually, once they become sub-adults or juveniles, they go all the way, and I'll show you, I'll try and find a map here. Let's use the map again. Do I have it? I might not. No, so I don't have the map here, but the loggerhead turtles go all the way from the east coast of Australia across the Pacific over to South America. And so they feed all the way across there, and they feed in South American waters for quite a while before they come back to Australian waters to nest again. So they do a full circle of the Pacific Ocean, taking up to about 30 years. They say the loggerheads are in the ocean for about 16 years, and then in coastal waters for about 13. And then by about 30 years old, they're ready to nest. And then they'll start mating and then getting fat and then nesting. Now, turtles are quite interesting the way they mate and nest. Once they have to build up quite a lot of reserves to be able to nest because it's very hard on their body. There's a really cool fact about turtles I'm going to ask you later. It might be our research question for today about turtles and their bodies and how they store their eggs. Now, when turtles are mating, they link up in the water, they mate, and then they part, and then the female with her fertilized eggs will come to the beach. She'll come up the beach at night time and lay these eggs. Now, she'll go away and she'll nest about 4 times in this season. So within about a few months, and it's different for each species, she will come up to the beach and lay anywhere from about 50 to 120, 140 eggs, depending on the species. Now, this Olive Ridley you're looking at here, she lays about 120, 100 eggs on average, and they're about the size of this ping pong ball here. So that's about it. They're pretty small, but they actually develop into a beautiful, cute little hatchling turtle, and I'll show you some photos of them later. But this girl, for example, she might reproduce, she might become into reproductive age a little bit earlier in her life, so about 15 to 20 years as opposed to 30. And so she'll nest, let's say, the first time in May. She'll go back to the waters, feed a bit more, and then she'll come back and she'll lay again, maybe in June and then in July. So they can nest about 3 or 4 times in a season, about 3 or 4 weeks apart. Some of the species a little bit less as well. So really cool. They nest multiple times, but then because it's so hard on their body, they don't nest again for another 4, 5, up to 7 years. And they only nest maybe 4 or 5 times in their lifetime, again, depending on the species. So they can be quite old, but because it takes so long for them to reach a reproductive age, that's why they have such long life cycles as well, and they need to be able to lay eggs all the time. All right, yeah, good question, Jake. What do sea turtles eat? So depending on the species again, they eat lots of different things. Now, I wonder if I save this picture, I might not have, but let's go into one of these in a second. So different turtles eat different things. So this guy you're looking at here, he loves mussels and crabs. So does our hawksbill friend. Green turtles are mostly herbivorous, so that means they mostly eat plants, seaweed, algae, that kind of thing. Jellyfish get eaten quite a lot, which is why a lot of people know about plastic bags and the problem of plastic in the ocean. A jellyfish, if you see it in the water, is quite transparent. Same with a plastic bag. So if turtles eat plastic bags, they can get plastic compaction in their gut, which stops digestion, which means they lose condition and eventually die. It has a range of other effects, including bubbles in the shell, so they can float, get a floating syndrome, lots of other things. So their diet varies. Let's say about half of them are herbivores and they eat seagrass, seaweed, algae. And the other half, let's say, are roughly carnivorous, so they eat things like crabs and mollusks, so shells, little clams, hermit crabs, little crabs like this, quite often slow-moving things on the bottom of the floor, and jellyfish. Our hawksbill friend loves soft corals. Their beak is adapted a lot better for soft corals. You can see it's quite sharp. Not a turtle you want to get bitten by. I've got a funny story about that later. We're going to talk about a bloke that got bitten. Good morning, Bobby. How you doing? All the way down in Tasmania. Bobby's one of our lovely clients that came on a Cape York tour once upon a time and was going to come on a tour this year, but we had to cancel our first two, or postpone anyway until next year. So g'day, Bobby down in Tasmania. She was a real sweetheart. All right, let's go into a few more pictures of these beautiful turtles. Now, all right. Excuse folks, here we go. All right, so this turtle here again is a olive ridley. Unfortunately, as you can see here, this one's had a mishap either with a shark or a croc. Hard to say which one. It's quite a clean cut across the top, which could suggest it was a shark. But this turtle, I think, had full mobility. There was another one that we found that had part of its shell removed as well, and she actually didn't have full mobility of her shell. Now, the story in Cape York at this stage, like I said before, by 2030, a lot of these turtles were going to become extinct if we didn't do anything. Part of it was because of the way we as humans were using turtles over the years. We were hunting them a lot for not only just meat and eggs, but their turtle shell as well. And then there's bycatch. But also, since Europeans have come to Australia and we've established in places like Cape York, animals like pigs have spread. And so what's happened in the last 100 years in Cape York is feral pigs have started to eat pig nests. And so they've reduced the amount of hatchlings that are making it into the ocean to the level that in 2012, if we go back to this image here, in 2012, in our first year, the amount of nests that were getting eaten by feral pigs was 100%. So every single turtle nest on this beach in 2012 was getting eaten by a feral pig. Now what that means is by 2030, maybe there was no turtle nest left there. No stock left to come back into the ocean. We got that down by 2013 to 24%. So 24% of turtle nests were getting eaten, which means about 76% were surviving, which is amazing. To go from 100% of nests being eaten down to 24% of nests being eaten was back to a sustainable level. But what that meant is we had to then be careful about the choices we made for turtles. And so there was one of these turtles that couldn't lay its own chamber. And so we actually helped her dig her own chamber to lay her eggs because her back flippers weren't working. So in the ocean, she could use her front flippers to swim, but she couldn't use her back flippers. Now, we'll go through a video in a minute which shows how important those back flippers are for digging that chamber, and it's really, really interesting. I'm going to go through a few more pictures first, and we'll have a look at, we'll have a look at a few more examples of these beautiful turtles that we get to see. So here's Stephen. I took this photo. This is Stephen. He's from Arakoon, really lovely bloke, amazing ranger. This is with the Ukpul Nungtum Rachers APN. If you want to follow their Facebook page, have a look. They do some phenomenal work on country. But the story behind this one is we had to dig a nest because it had hatched, and we usually do a nest count on it. So what we're looking for is a few different things in there. So how many of the eggs hatched, how many were unfertilized, how many died in the egg, or how many died in the nest, and how many were live in the nest. So in this case, we actually dug the nest, and a few didn't make it out. And because of the effort we have to do to catch up for all these pigs that have eaten nests over the years, we actually decided to take a lot of the live in nests to the ocean and give them a shot to try and boost that population as much as we can. I put these turtles in Stephen's hand here, and the poor bugger, his hands were tickling so much he was laughing. Now, he wouldn't normally smile too much for a photo, but this day his hands were smiling. His face was smiling so much because his hands were really ticklish and their little eggs, little hatchlings were moving around in his hands. But that photo actually made it into this here marine turtle field guide for the whole of Queensland on the inside front cover. So how cool is that? A ranger from Arakoon is in the inside front cover of this field guide for turtles in Australia. So really cool. All right, a few more photos and then I'm gonna take you to a cool video. That's a little olive ridley hatchling. Here's another one for size, so really small, the size of your hand, tiny when they come out. And that's a flatback, so that's the other one. I find these guys really cute. Look at that eye. That eye's just gorgeous, really blue, quite stunning, isn't it? And if you look along, you can see his little scoots, their scales developing. Really gorgeous. So let's take a quick look at a couple of videos here. And folks, if you do have questions, please ask them. Hey, g'day John from Townsville. Hey, Dano, how you going, mate? And Tyler and Liliana, how are yous? Glad you could join it today. We're going to watch a couple of videos here now real quickly. Really, really cool little videos on how they nest. Phenomenal stuff. So we're going to go to the flatback first, and I'll play it. Here we go. Alright, so what you're seeing here is the flatback. She is digging with her rear flippers. So they digged an egg chamber with their rear flippers. Alright, so I'm just going to take it back to this little bit right here. Now see here, what she's doing is her hand is really dexterous. So she's actually putting her hand in to dig this chamber and scooping sand like this, and then when she comes out, she places her hand on the side of where the chamber is. She leaves that sand in her hand, kind of dumps it softly on the ground, but leaves her flipper there. Now watch right as she goes to put her other flipper in what happens, and so they alternate what they do here. Puts it out, flicks the other one. So see that there? As she places one and puts the sand out, she flicks the sand from the other one away at the front. And that goes up near the front flipper, and later on she actually puts that same sand back in, so it's nice and moist and it's pretty good. So similar temperature, all sorts of things. So just watch as we go. I'll play that again a little bit. Places and flicks. That's pretty cool, eh? Depositing the eggs. A few come out at a time. They're very mucousy. So you can see just there, just here, you can see her tail. That's actually her tail right here. And on the end of her tail is a little tube that deposits the eggs, and they come out covered in mucus, and quite often like a few at a time. So this is a flatback. Now I said before, olive ridley eggs are about this big, about as big as this ping pong ball. Add another about centimetre in diameter for the flatback. Now she'll only lay 50 or 80 eggs. They're a bit bigger, the hatchlings are a bit bigger when they come out, but still quite a lot of eggs. That's it. So let's just go back to that last bit again there. Depositing the eggs. Awesome. Now we're going to go to the next one. So actually, just before we go, that's a flatback turtle. Now, different turtles have different ways of nesting, different body sizes, all sorts of things, and their tracks are also different. Really interesting. So with our olive ridley that we're going to go to next, she has a different way of nesting. Now, when that flatback there that we just saw finish nesting, she will do what's called frenzying, and she'll actually cover crazily the nest, and it'll make a big mess of the area to disguise where the nest is, so predators can't find it. The flatback actually lays her eggs quite deep in the sand, so I think from memory about 70 centimetres at the bottom of the chamber, as opposed to about 50 for the olive ridley. So the olive ridley lays her eggs shallower. The problem with that is when predators came along the beach, like dogs or pigs, they would actually sniff the eggs out quite a lot easier because the olive ridley's nests were shallower and quite simpler. The olive ridley also she slams her body shell, which you're about to see as well. All right, so here's olive ridley laying. You can see there she's finished laying, so she's covering up there. I'll just take it back a little bit. She's covering up with her rear flippers there, so they actually put all the sand back in, they cover it in, and they actually pack it down as they go. So they pack the nest so it doesn't all sink in. So they pack the nest with their rear flippers. Here you're going to see her just covering that last little bit of sand, and what the olive ridleys do is quite cool. They actually slam their chest against the sand in the chamber to flatten it out and make it hard again so you don't get that sand sinking in. You're about to see it here. Slap, slap, slap. All right, and now fast forward, and we've got some beautiful hatchlings. Now that last one's a flatback, but I didn't have an image of the other ones going to the ocean. So let's just go that again. Slam, 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 and then the little ones make it to the ocean. So these are actually, full disclosure, these are actually turtles that we dug out of the nest on a nest check, just to see what was going on. But they'd race down to the ocean together. Normally they would just paddle straight for 2 days against the waves, perpendicular to the waves. So perpendicular means the waves are coming this way. The turtles are going to go perpendicular, the opposite direction to them. All right, beauty. There's one more. Some of these guys never got to see turtles in their lives, and so seeing one like this is a really cool experience. Alrighty, good morning, Dange, Marilyn, Damien. All right, let's take a quick break here. We'll answer some questions. I've got some questions coming through. So, first question here from Donna: taking the turtles from the nest and placing them in the sea mess with their radar? Do they get disorientated? All right, so good question. There's a thing called natal homing, essentially, or nest fidelity as well, with turtles. Very true, really good point. So I'm sure a lot of people know turtles use what's known as a magnetic field. I'm going to pull up a picture here just so we got something to look at other than me while we're waiting. All right, here we go. So while the eggs are in the nest, they're going to be in there for about 55 to 60 days before they start hatching. Now, what we quite often see in the nest is, from above is nothing but a flat bit until this. So this is actually a nest beneath the sand. Now you can't see it. The wind has actually swept all of the tracks away. None are left. And so what's actually happening here is over about 3 days, the hatchlings start hatching. So they don't hatch at the exact same time. They'll hatch, but the first one to hatch waits for the rest, because the first one isn't going to be strong enough to push out through the sand by himself. And it's not a good idea, because if there's one bird there and one hatchling, there's a good chance that bird's going to get that hatchling. So he'd rather have 120 of him going out at the same time. Sardine theory. Now what's happened here is the sand is actually falling in to fill the gaps left by the eggs as the hatchlings come out. So there's little gaps of air in there. And as the hatchlings come out of the eggs, there's little spaces made, and eventually the sand sinks in. So over 3 days, this hole gets a little bit deeper, and that's how we sometimes know that a nest is about to erupt, and we can keep an eye on it and look for it. Now, eventually they come out, but while they're in the nest here, the magnetic field, we think, imprints on the hatchlings while they're in there. So things like the angle of the magnetic field and the area that you're in as well. And so essentially, no, we don't think that removing from the nest physically when they're in there, because they're going to die anyway. So this is Donna's question. What's happened is all of the hatchlings that were healthily have erupted. Let's say 80 out of 100 have erupted and gone down. Now there was about 15 in there. 5 eggs that didn't make it, that weren't fertilized properly, and there was 15 left in there that had hatched, but maybe were slightly deformed or couldn't get out with the rest, or got stuck because they got stuck under a hard bit of sand. So what we do is we go along and assess that nest to see how successful it was. And if we find those 15 hatchlings, they've already been imprinted. Yes, it's probably better for them to make it to the ocean by themselves, but if we leave those 15 in there, they were going to die anyway. And because of the need to get these hatchlings in the ocean, because of the damage from pigs and other animals over the years and other humans, the chance that one of those 15 might survive to become an adult, we need it. So we took the chance there. Hopefully their magnetic imprinting has been done while they're in the nest, but we took them down and we released them in the ocean anyway. So the number is 1 in 1,000 of these eggs will make it to, or 1 in 1,000 hatchlings will make it to a mature reproductive adult. So 1 in 1,000 is incredible. It's really low. Good morning, Ree. Good morning, Sarah. Hey, good morning, Michelle. All right, so Michelle, you might have just come in. There's 7 different species of sea turtle in the world, and we have 6 in Australia, and 1 we're lucky to only have here. So he's we call them endemic, a species that's only local to your area. So that's the flatback turtle, which we showed pictures of just earlier. You'll be able to go through and play this back on YouTube later on if you missed it anyway. But yeah, 7 species in the world, so let's run through them. Let's see if I got it. We got the leatherback. He is huge. He actually doesn't have a hard shell. He's got a soft skin kind of shell. They can dive down to supposedly about 1,000 meters. And that's because their shell, their body can compress. And they've got oil in their skin as well that allows nitrogen to be absorbed, and they can deal with that decompression. The other turtles don't go that deep. So leatherback, then we've got the loggerhead, we've got the flatback, the green, the hawksbill, and the olive ridley. So there are 6 in Australia. The 7th one over here, he's over in Costa Rica, South America. He's called the Kemp's ridley, so quite similar to our olive ridley turtle. Yeah, very interesting. So over in Costa Rica, that area, they used to have a thing, guys, called arrabada, which is a Spanish term, or Portuguese maybe, I can't remember now, for mass nesting. And so you can see this in some beaches still locally, where, you know, hundreds upon hundreds of turtles would come up and they'd lay on one night, and then it'd be nothing, you know, for nights before it, maybe something a little bit similar a night after, but hundreds of turtles would nest at once en masse. And that was called arrabada. Now, we think there's a scientist in Australia, really, really good scientist, Ian Bell. He thinks that we used to potentially have arrabada in Australia as well, before potentially pigs decimated the nests and lots of other things happened. So we're wondering if on our beach, where we had lots of olive ridleys, if we could have had arrabada once upon a time. Good morning, Tony. Hey, Lauren, how's it going? All right, let's keep going through some of these pictures. Tell some stories. Where are we up to? We're up to this cute little turtle here. So that's our flatback hatchling. These are some olive ridley hatchlings. This is a couple of the rangers. Now, these boys were from Arakoon and Pomparore. They'd never seen a turtle in their life. Now, this beach was on their own homeland, so they're the traditional custodians of this land, and never in their life have they seen a turtle. This is an olive ridley. She's essentially in a trance at the moment. No matter what we do, she's probably not going to wake up unless we maybe play frisbee with her, which wouldn't be real cool. But we are just chilling out, watching her. We've got a couple of lights on. But this is the first time these guys on their own homelands had ever seen a turtle nesting before. So it was a really special experience for them, and it was really special for me too to be with them on this. I was talking them through what was going on here, much like I was just talking through that video back there before. But yeah, quite a beautiful experience for everyone. Now this is a flatback. You can see her shell's quite a bit flatter on the back. A slightly bigger turtle. Beautiful, massive big nest. So she frenzies a little bit different to cover up the nest than the olive ridley. I'll show you a picture for size in a moment. So that's her there. She's quite a big turtle. There you can see another one there. That's Steve. So I'll tell you a little funny story about a turtle here. Now, there's a bunch of guys. Now, same story again. Lots of these guys had never seen turtles on their homelands before we took them out and did this work with them, so really special. I'm just going to keep going through this because I didn't put up a warning about Aboriginal people being up if we have any Aboriginal people watching, sorry. Alright, and this is a hawksbill. So our funny story, we're going back to our flatback turtle here. So we would also tag turtles. What that let us do is monitor a specific individual and see where she would nest again in the future, monitor her growth rate, how many times she'd nest in a season if we could find her again. But we'd actually put these steel tags on turtles, right on their flipper. So just in here, she doesn't have one, but we'd tag these turtles. So this one night I was out with one of the ranger coordinators, and it was his first time on the beach, and we had to tag a flatback like this. And so this flatback was actually returning after she'd nested back to the ocean. So we grabbed this flatback, and I'd never seen this done in my life. Now, some people have said that flatbacks can be quite sassy. I think they're quite lovely. But this flatback in particular was making its way back down to the beach and said, "Hey mate, we've got it. Let's call him John for for storytelling purposes." Said, "Hey John, we've got to grab this turtle and tag it. Can you give me a hand?" So I've got this flatback. I've grabbed her shell. I've got my knee on her back, and I've got to stop her getting back to the ocean so I can put this tag in her for research. So John's helped me grab her, and then he's managed to fall on his back, on his butt, and the turtle's crawled right up into his lap and here. And I've gone, "Oh no, crikey Mick, oh, you might want to get out of there. I've got to tag this turtle." And he's gone, "Nah, she'll be right." And I said, no, I've got to tag this turtle. I'm going to put it like a spike through her fin. It's not going to be real nice. It's like, no, just do it. Quickly go. I've got her. And I was like, "John, move." And he's like, no, it's okay. And I've gone, "Oh no, look, I've got to do it." And at the moment I put the tag through, it's probably a little bit painful. It healed quickly. But the poor turtle freaked out, and it's gone, bugger, and bit poor John right on the stomach. And luckily it was quite cold. It was winter. So he had a lot of clothing on. He had a big, thick jacket. But it left a huge, blood blister on his chest there. I'd never seen it before, but I think the turtle and John got quite a shock, quite an equal shock. And yeah, anyway, we managed to figure out John was okay, the turtle was okay, and it went back to the ocean, and we went home and had a laugh. So, funny story about some flatbacks there. Alrighty, let's keep going through. We're just going to catch up. So this is a hawksbill. Now, really important story about this one. I'm going to go back to a map here. Where are we? Here we go. Now, hawksbills mostly occur on the east coast. Let's look at these maps for a bit. Here we go, going bigger. Alright, so hawksbills and greens mostly on the east coast, flatback and olive ridleys mostly on the west coast of Cape York. Now, over the years, hawksbills have been predated quite a lot. They're critically endangered. Most of the other turtles are endangered, but they're critically endangered. Now, I want to show you why, one of the reasons they are. It's this thing I showed us earlier. So I'm just going to wet this and show you what it is exactly. Alright, here we go. This right here is a scale from a hawksbill turtle shell. Now, going back to the 60s, 70s, 80s, this was more valuable than gold for weight. And so hawksbill turtles were killed all around for a thing called tortoiseshell. Now I'm going to put another photo up here. And today we're quite lucky in that they are plastic, but tortoiseshell was big in fashion. And back in the day, a lot of people's sunglasses like this were tortoiseshell. Can you see the similarity? So unfortunately, back in the day, the hawksbill turtle was hunted a lot just for its shell that was incredibly valuable. A few decades ago, a lot of governments in the Pacific Islands actually seized a lot of this, and they put it on beaches locally, invited people locally to come and see it, and burnt it in front of everyone to say, "No more, we're not doing this anymore, we're not selling this." So today a lot of the glasses you see with this style are actually plastic, but it's a replica of this old turtle scale here, or a scoot. So that's one of the reasons our poor hawksbill turtle was in quite a lot of trouble. Now let's go back to him. You can kind of see that coloration on his shell just here, but these guys are really pretty. So now if we look at our map again, like I was saying, our hawksbills normally nested on the east coast, but that was a picture from our beach. So over here, we recorded hawksbill turtle nesting, which is incredibly important. So over the 6 years we were there, we found one of the most significant nesting beaches potentially in Australia, and reported that data to One of the world's biggest turtle researchers in Australia. He's down at Monrepo, called Olympus. And he was like, wow, he sent an EHP staff member up there and she verified the data we were taking. So we had 3 species. So olive ridley's nesting in mass more than any other Cape York beach that was found. We also had a crossover point where we were getting flatbacks too. So quite often you'd have flatbacks more to the north, olive ridleys to the south, but we had a crossover where we had both. And then all of a sudden we had hawksbills nesting on our beach, which because the rookeries, the nesting sites over here were starting to fail, in West Coast we started to get, we might have had a beach where it supported nesting of these critically endangered hawksbills, which is really cool. All right, let's keep going through. More fun stuff. Our hawkie, now this is a picture for his size. Again, about the same size as an olive ridley turtle. Now here we go, here's a cool story. This poor fella, he was getting marked to be get a sat tag put on him essentially. Now you might have seen the picture in the ad that I put up on Facebook. That is this turtle. So she was a female. She finished laying. We brought her back to camp. What Wilton's doing here is he's using a paint scraper. So they're essentially turtles shed their shell in a similar way that snakes shed theirs. So there's a layer that comes off. Wilton's actually peeling it off here because if that sheds while the satellite device is on there, it'll actually remove the satellite device as well. So he's cleaning that scoot off, removing some of that shell, and so he gets down to the fresh layer where we can attach a satellite device. Now here it is, it's all done. So this poor darling, we called her, what did we call her? CW2 her name was, after the guy you just saw in the picture before. Chief Willie, so Chief Wilton too. So TW2 her name was, and we released her into the ocean. She was seen to move. I'll bring up her track map here. I think this mightn't have been her, but it's quite similar. She started here near Arakoon, worked her way all down the west coast before we lost her transmitter around here. But quite a lot of the time, we actually have turtles moving from Australia all the way up into Indonesia. So these turtles from west coast of Cape York, they go over there, which poses another problem because in Australia, our laws are quite good for turtles. Indonesia, maybe not so much. So she might have got eaten over there if she'd have gone there. So lots of different problems. So Australian waters have got great laws. So that's CW2. You can see just there, she's been tagged. That's that tag I was talking about before. That's a beautiful face. And just behind it, you can see that tag again, that steel tag at her flipper. She got a number on her. And that's us releasing her just before she went into the ocean. Alright, there's your map that we just saw. So here's some data from a satellite tag that you saw on a turtle there. So they're moving around. A couple of different islands. There's up near Raine. It's another example of one. Alright, let's have a look at questions again. Oh, Roman. What's my favourite turtle and why? I definitely have to say olive ridleys. They're the turtle I work with the most. They're quite small, very cute, very lovely. If you could call a turtle friendly, you'd say they're probably friendly as well. But yeah, I was quite familiar with them, did a lot of work on the olive ridleys, so I'd say olive ridleys are my favourite by far. I'm just going to have a look at this question about caterpillars. Sorry, I can't see it at the moment. I'll have to come back to that soon. Sheds a lot. Is that part of the life cycle? I'm not sure if you're talking about caterpillars or turtles. Caterpillars, yes, they do shed a lot. Turtles essentially also shed their shell as well a little bit. All right, see you, Lauren. Good on you. Yeah, the version will be up later. We've still got another 15-20 minutes here, folks, so we'll end with a few questions in a couple more videos anyway. Keep going through these. So this is some sat mapping here from that device you saw on them. And here's an example of where turtles have been recorded with those steel tags that we put in their flippers, not the big satellite tags. This is a green turtle, and different turtles being picked up in different areas. So I'd say the colours refer to an individual maybe that's been recorded at different locations. Potentially, I'm not entirely sure. But there's lots of different data from tags all over the Indo-Pacific region. All right, here's a cool video that's going to show what digging, what
This is
nest digging is
an
like.
olive ridley track, and this is what we call a body pit. So what they do is they want to dig the sand, and they're looking to make an egg chamber, and they're looking for somewhere to put their eggs, but they don't like it, and so they'll go to the next one like there, and the next one, and these are called body pits. So they've dug, but they don't like the soil or the sand or something hard or a bottle or some rubbish, and so they'll keep going until they find something they like. And the way you can tell which way the chuck is going is usually the body pits are at the bottom, and then they'll nest higher. They usually don't do body pits on the way down because they've already laid the egg chamber. And on this one here, you can see the way the sand goes, the turtle's pushed against that, which means they're going that way. See here, they've done this, push, push, push. So that means they're going that way. That's on the way down, they've finished laying. And those body pits there are on the way up.
Awesome. All right, so what you see there is you can actually tell a lot from a turtle by its tracks. You can identify the species by its tracks. You can see which way it was going, what it was doing. So we're going to go through a bunch of tracks now, and I'm just going to tell a story for each picture on what might have been happening in this one. But you can see here where my hand is there, that's where the turtle is pushed back, and as it's moved, it's caught sand and eventually pushed against that, essentially a block, to go forward. And this is a funny one, so...
Alright, we're going to do a recreation of the flatback turtle that's nested here. So she's come down, she's engaged her four-wheel drive over there, some four-wheel drive hubs. She's done this crazy nest, and now we're going to recreate what she did when she went down. So she was all like, and then she hit this, and
So if you have a look just here, where I'm about to fall down there, have a look how steep that is. There's a flatback, so this is a flatback turtle that's done this track. She had to go up. She's engaged her four-wheel drive, for sure. She got on a bloody ARB, she's got some four-wheel drive lockers, and she's gone up that cliff and then onto the plateau to go and nest. Now that's quite steep and impressive. Now if an olive ridley hit that same bank, she would actually turn around and all you'd see is a track without a nest. So each time you see a track that isn't necessarily a nest, what I was talking about there was things called body pits. And so you can walk along and there might be 6 holes along one particular turtle nest track. What's happened is she has dug in that soil, realised that it's not the best, it's not going to be great for her eggs to develop. And so she's decided that no, that's not the right hole, and she'll keep moving up the beach until she finds the right temperature, the right moisture level, and she'll dig there. It's really important to find the right spot because the sex of turtles is dependent on temperature. So while the eggs are in the chamber, their sex is actually being determined by the temperature of the sand. So if she lays it in too cool a temperature, they're all going to be girls. If she lays it in too hot, they're going to be guys. The way I remember it is... Sorry, no, other way around. The way I remember it is dudes are cool and chicks are hot. So dudes are cool. So if she lays her eggs in cooler sand, they're all going to be boys. If she lays it in sand that's too hot, they're all going to be girls, which is why there's a problem with climate change, global warming, with temperatures in the world increasing. Sand is getting hotter. Another thing is sand colour can also determine temperature. So in northern Cape York, there's an island called Crab Island. The sand colour there is different to the mainland. And so there's actually different sex ratios from this island to the mainland. So you're getting more, I can't remember what it is, but let's say more females on the island than you are on the mainland, which gets more male hatchlings developed. Awesome. All right, so I got a question here from Jody. What types of turtles are endangered? I'm pretty sure every turtle is classed now as endangered. The hawksbill is classed as critically endangered. So most of our turtle species are in a lot of risk, and it's for a lot of reasons, which we'll go through pretty soon. But it's overfishing, it's lots of hunting for their food all over the world, for eggs and meat. It's getting caught in nets, it's bycatch. It's predation by things like pigs on the turtle nests. Like I mentioned, temperature changes are destroying nests. Erosion on an island. There's an island in the top of Cape York called Raine Island. I've heard different numbers, but 11,000 to 60,000 turtles can nest there in a season. which is absolutely phenomenal. There's some cool videos that I could show you later. David Attenborough's done a documentary there. I'll give you some links later on in the video I share. But yeah, lots of turtles there, and erosion's a big thing. So turtles are falling, flipping on their back, dying. The nest success there, for example, I think from memory is around 2 to 5%. So 2 to 5% of the eggs produce viable hatchlings. That's even before that hatchling is a 1 in 1,000. On our beach, our nest success was between 70 and 90%. So 70 to 90% of our eggs would make it to hatchlings, and then from there it was 1 in 1,000. Alrighty, let's keep going on here. Alright, tracks. We're going to go through some turtle tracks. You can see here, and you can kind of tell which way she's come up. So she's come up this way. Oh, sorry, no, she's come up this way because that track's under the other one. Now this looks like nearly a hawksbill nest the way it is. Sometimes it's quite hard to tell. So flatbacks and olive ridleys are entirely different. Hawksbills are like nearly a mix of the in-between. Alright, quick question time. Hey Joey. Hey Chili, how are you, mate? Jake, what do turtles like to do? Do they play? I think that's a great question. And I think a lot of animals do have essentially a curious or a playful nature. You see it in a lot of animals. Being sea turtles, it's harder for us to see because they're underwater and we don't get to observe them as much as we do land animals. But a lot of juveniles play. Like you look at tiger cubs and they play, lion cubs and they play. I would not be surprised if juvenile turtles would play on the EAC like Crush from Nemo. I wouldn't be surprised if they do things that are kind of playful. And I bet adults as well. You see them scratch themselves on coral in some videos. They sleep underwater. Turtles can hold their breath for up to 7 hours potentially, and maybe even partly kind of hibernate underwater. Depending on if they're active or not. If they're active and they're feeding, because they're using their muscles and their muscles are using oxygen, they can only be underwater for a couple of minutes at a time. If a turtle's caught in a net and it's thrashing, it's using all that oxygen in its muscles, so they can't hold their breath for very long. But if they do a controlled dive, essentially where they've got oxygen in their body, they can go underwater and sleep underwater for hours and on hours. So it's quite hard to know what they do underwater, but definitely. How hot do turtles get? Turtles don't get too hot. They're really only on the beach. Ideally, they nest at night time. Some nest during the day, and even then, they're coming up, just nesting, going straight back to the water. So temperatures of the water depend around the world. Tropical water's quite warm. It's a really good question. I couldn't tell you the body temperature of a turtle, but it would be pretty similar to the temperature of the water wherever they go. So they are reptiles. They can't warm their body like we can. And they do rely on surface temperature and water, so I wouldn't be surprised if they spend some time basking up in shallow waters or with their shell up and then dive again, but their body temperature would be quite similar to the temperature of the water around them. Good question. Alright, so you can see there's a tail drag in this one. We'll keep going through some of these pictures here. This is a big mess, so she's come up this way on the left, and then she's laid 1, 2, 3 body pits and didn't like it, and then she's laid her nest here and gone out. So this is a big flatback nest, quite different to what I'll show you next, which is going to be an olive ridley. Here we go. Now this is an olive ridley, entirely different. She's come up, laid in one little area right there, no big frenzy. She's done that chest slap and then she's just gone back down. Really simple, nice and easy. Now here you go. You can see just in here, have a look at this. There's dog prints. So we always say there's 2 main phases of predation with turtles. It's when it's within a few days of them nesting because there's that mucus smell around, and then it's within a few days of them hatching because there's that smell of the gas being opened up. Go through a few more of these. Lots of dog prints there. You can see here now, I said before, you can tell by the tracks, you can see that these tracks are what's called alternate. So instead of being opposite each other like this, they're actually zigzagging like that. So if you look at these tracks zigzagging, that means it's probably an olive ridley. Not always, but usually. Here's an example of an olive ridley not being able to make it up a cliff like that video I played with before where I fell down the cliff. She's hit, and this is much smaller than the other one, but she's hit this and not been able to make it up. She can't nest in that area because the tide gets that high, so she has to actually nest above the high tide line there. So she's gone back to the ocean and had a crack somewhere else. So here you go, you can see the direction she's coming down this way by that arrow, and her tracks there, an olive ridley and they're alternate. All right, here we go. Here's an interesting one. This is a turtle with 2 tracks. Now you can see the front and rear flipper on the right, and just on this side, one of the flippers. So on this side here, she's actually lost a flipper. So that track isn't quite normal, but she's got a nub essentially. She's been eaten by a shark maybe, and she's actually lost a bit of her flipper there. Now it looks like I'm going to go over time a little bit, folks. I probably started a little bit late. So if you do have to go, please go. But if you want to stay a little bit longer, I can probably talk for another 10 or 15 minutes. I've got quite a few more photos and a couple of videos to go left. But if you do want to go, feel free to leave, and I'll post the rest of this up and you can catch it later. But I will go now for another 10 or 15 minutes, I reckon. How cool is this? Turtles. All right, you can see that nub there where she's lost her flipper. That's the other way. All right, so here we go. We've got 2 tracks. So this is what we would do in the morning. We'd be riding along on the quad bike along the beach with that low angle of the sun. We get shadows cast on the tracks so we can find the tracks really easily. And here you can see 2 what looks to be Olive Ridley tracks. I've seen them driving along on the quad, and I've gone to mark them. I would use my turtle app. Now this is what we would do. I'll show you here. We would actually, let me bring up the first page. All right, so here we go. I would come up to this. I would select which turtle I think it was on the iPad. I would say if it was a nest or a false crawl. And then I'd say if we were going to monitor it, we put a Peggy in the ground. We would give her an ID. And then we would say if it was a new nest, like within a couple of days, or if it was old and we'd missed it. I would then record if it had been predated by pigs or dogs or goannas. I'd say if there was vegetation around. I would say where on the beach it was. Now, if you look here, you don't want to be in the intertidal zone because the waves or the tide might come up. If the water goes over the nest, it can essentially drown the eggs. The eggs still need a gas exchange, so waste gases have to come out, oxygen has to come in. And so there's a fine little tube that comes in, and they use that to be able to breathe essentially. So if water comes over that and on high tide, it can drown that nest and all of those eggs will die. So this one nested on the beach area. Some go up a bit further in the slope or above the vegetation. So that was the app that we used to use to record these. And here's an example of, oh, there we go. Here's an example of that either breaststroke opposite or the alternate stroke there. So alternate and opposite. Beauty. So going back here, I'd be driving along and I'd see those kind of tracks. That's my quad I've pulled up there in a hurry, as you can see. You can see a bit of sand's pulled up in front of the tyres. And I've gone and marked these couple of nests. Here's another one. You can see the tracks of this one have been since we've been past. So that was probably one night ago. We would have been on that beach the day before and that turtle's come up after us. There's another good example of a flatback going over a pretty steep cliff. So over time, you can lose nests because of the wind. The wind will blow the nest away. A few more. And eventually, yeah, so this is the vehicle we eventually got, was a side-by-side, and we relied on funding from the government to get this stuff. So the groups I used to work with got funded to buy something like this so they could do this work, which is amazing. It was really important. Without that funding, they couldn't have done it. So, yeah, wonderful. All right, hey Christy and Abby, how do you tell the difference between the eggs? Which turtle has which egg? Okay, good question. So what we're looking at is we usually know what species a turtle is before we look at the egg. So in this example here, we can tell by the tracks and the size of this nest. See how big this nest is here? That's a huge, huge nest. Now that's definitely a flatback. So we know if we do a nest dig at the end of this to check on the eggs, we know that the eggs are going to be those big flatback eggs, those ones that are slightly bigger. Hey Yang, how you going? Oh yeah, great question. I will show you because I have that exact photo coming up. All right, so that question was, what do croc tracks look like? And the next one is, do turtles make different tracks? So croc tracks is coming up, and different turtles do make different tracks. Absolutely, yeah. So because turtles can be bigger or smaller, bigger turtles leave heavier, deeper tracks, and they often need to do opposite moving, whereas the smaller turtles are a little bit lighter. can move up, and they use that alternate movement as opposed to this one. Alright, so here's some hatchling tracks after they've come out of the nest. You can see all along here, these are all hatchling tracks. So that's a hatchling fan or a nesting fan. You can see them going down to the beach. Run along, off they go into the ocean. Now this photo was really cool for me because you could see the mother's tracks beneath all the babies coming over the top of it. I thought that was really cool, and there's the nest up there in our marking peg. Another nest where they've come out, lots and lots of turtle tracks. That's a really good example of that hatchling fan. And another one. So they're all nests where the hatchlings have come out and gone to the ocean. Pretty cool, eh? Here's a little guy that didn't make it, unfortunately. Alright, here we go. Yang. That's a croc. So, and that was a decent sized croc too. On this beach in particular, just behind it, about 2 kilometers, was a lagoon, a freshwater lagoon. And so we really often saw crocs walking up the beach over the dune towards this lagoon. And so at night time, I was always telling the boys, like, if we're out looking for turtles at night, just be careful. Remember, if you see a croc, or a croc track, just keep an eye up on the right of you as well. One night, I was with a ranger. We saw this croc on the beach, and we tried to get up close to it. It was only a small one, but we tried to get up close to it to have a look and take some photos. And we had our headlamps on, and the croc realised we were there, panicked. But because we kind of blinded it temporarily, it ran straight towards us, and me and the ranger just bolted the other way. And then we freaked out a bit. Eventually the croc, after our light had gone, went into the ocean and took off. But that's what a croc track looks like. No small tail mark down the middle. You can see that big tail moving back and forth over their tracks. Much smaller tracks on there too. Alright, we've been through that one and that one. Alright, let's look at some nests. So this is that tail where they drop the eggs. Lots of little eggs in there. Hey, good morning, Ben. How you going? Alright, so this is us tagging this turtle here. That's what I was mentioning before, putting that steel tag in. Now, a really cool thing, we tagged a turtle in my first year there in 2013, I think it was. And I couldn't believe it, but I was so excited. I always wanted to see a turtle come back. In my last year there, I think that was 2016, no, it was 2017, I came across this turtle that had a tag in it, and I was really excited because I was like, brilliant, we can record the data, we can call Cole, ask for the records and see where that turtle came from. I looked at the number on that thing, and I recognized the number as one of my own. It was a QA something, something, something. And I looked up my records, and it was a turtle that I'd tagged in my first year there, and it had come back and nested within about 300 meters of the exact same spot it nested when I tagged it all those years before. So really cool. They come back to the same spots, and that's that magnetic, that Natal Homing. And so they'll come back to that same beach once they're adults as well to nest again. So part of the reason why we tag them. There's the egg chamber, so you can see the eggs down there with soft sand on top. And this is during a nest count afterwards. So there's some of the turtles have hatched, and then we've done a dig to assess how successful that nest was. That's what it often looks like. Now this was an entire nest that we dug because it had been inundated multiple times, so the water actually, the high tide came over it and would have drowned those eggs. And so that's how we used to count them in rows of 10, and then just count the rows. So it looks like 3, 6, 9, 110. So there's 117 eggs there. 117 eggs for that olive ridley turtle. And they're about the size of that little ping pong ball there. Pretty cool, eh? So here we have, I think that was 110. So that was 100, maybe it was 107. Yep, 107 it was, sorry. So there's 100 eggs here, and they're all looking pretty viable. These two, I'm guessing the way I've laid them out would have been viable. And then these were unfertilized eggs, so they were no good. And then these might have been unhatched eggs, so the turtles developed in there, but they didn't hatch. So we'd always do a ratio. We'd count how many had hatched successfully by counting the eggs, how many were unhatched, so the turtles developed, they were fertilized, but they didn't make it out of the egg. How many were unfertilized, which meant there was just an egg in there, but there was no fertilization, so it didn't develop it into an embryo, and that's those there. And so that's what an embryo of a turtle looks like. You can see his big eye developing there. We are going to see some stuff that's a little bit different now, folks. So if you're worried, sorry, I should have preluded that. But this is essentially the embryo of a turtle inside the egg. These ones didn't make it. These eggs, unfortunately, they had fried. So that's an embryo. It's going to draw all its nutrients off the yolk there. This is really rare. So these are actually twins. You didn't see these too often. So these are two cute little twinny turtles in the shell. So that's really, really amazing, really cool, really rare. And that's them out of the shell. They were hugged right up in there. So isn't it incredible that those two could fit inside that egg together? Now they are flatbacks, so that's that slightly larger egg as well. There's that nest depression we were talking about before. That's about how big it is. Alright, so that yolk there is what feeds them. Now right before they come out of their egg, they internalise that yolk into their body, and that's the energy they use for 2 days straight. So what they do is once they come out, they run along the beach as quick as they can to get away from the seagulls and the fish and everything, and they swim perpendicular to the waves, so that way. So the waves are coming this way, they swim that way for 2 days, and the energy they use comes from that yolk sac right there. And so they'll swim 2 days straight using that yolk sac, and then they'll eventually feed on zooplankton. G'day Claire, how you going? All right, yeah, we're getting to how we protected them from feral pigs. If people want to stick around a bit longer, here we go. We're getting into the predation scene now. So like I was saying, if we didn't do anything about predation, and that unfortunately included dogs and goannas because of the impact of pigs for so long. So at least 100 years, we think, pigs have been digging up potentially every nest. So that meant we needed to also control dogs and goannas, which unfortunately are native, but we know that their populations are very stable. The turtles weren't, so we had to take care of them on this beach. So we're going to watch this video here. This is actually a video of a dingo digging up and eating a nest using a time-lapse camera. I'm going to have to start this one again. Alright, here we go. So the dingo's just coming in, it's just starting to dig, and it's just starting to eat some of the eggs now. Now this one would come back over a couple of days to finish this nest in particular. So that's the 26th of July at the moment at midnight. Now we're 29th of July, so a few nights later it came back and dug it up again. So if you have a look at that video, you can actually look down the bottom and you can see the thing here is covering it up. There we go. You can see the timestamp there. Down here. Excuse me. 26, so I came back on the 27th as well, or was that the same night? Oh no, so that's from 8 o'clock on the same night till midnight, came back again at midnight, and then on the 29th, 2 days later, came back again. So that dingo ate that entire nest. So that's what we were fighting against, and that's what it looks like after a dingo, by the look of it there, has dug a nest. And dingoes and pigs look a little bit different. Donatello was my favourite Ninja Turtle as a kid. I think Shane's was Leonardo. My brother's was Leonardo. I hope I got that right. We'll see. All right. So we did quite a lot of helicopter work out there too. So we'd flown in to check the predation. Now these tracks you can see along here are pig tracks. Pigs were predating all the nests along this beach. So what had actually happened was quite interesting. The lagoons on the coast just behind the beach, once they dried out and that food source, so all the plants in there dried out, the pigs needed more food, so they actually came down to the beach to eat nests. So we realised that as those lagoons were drying out, we would start to watch the beach for the pigs to come down and try and control better there. So that's, by the look of it, a dog dig nest, and that's a pig right in the middle of a pig nest, of a turtle nest, digging it up. So this is one of the methods we used, quite simple. It works sometimes, but not every time, but it was worth it. It was simple, cheap, and effective. So we'd put mesh over the top. It potentially messed with the magnetic field, but it was way worth saving the turtles than having them not get their magnetic imprint. We needed the turtles regardless. So here's an example of one that worked. Now this, it looks like is a pig and a dog that's come around and tried to get into this and couldn't dig in. So you can see that nest depression there where the hatchlings are about to erupt. So that simple nest mesh saved that turtle nest. And that was about $5 worth. This is another method we used. This got a lot of attention in the media. It was a program that potentially saved 20 or 30,000 hatchlings a year with doing nothing. So all we did was, on the coast we were on, we were lucky to have a river running parallel to the beach like this, and all we did was we put a fence across that bit there, and so the pigs couldn't get down on the inside. And by doing about 3 kilometers of fencing, pig fencing, not all of it was this, it was mostly mesh as well. By 3 kilometers of fencing, we protected 20 kilometers of nesting habitat of beach. So quite a lot of that beach was protected, which is phenomenal. So over the years, we didn't need to go back to that area too much because the pigs couldn't get into there. Dion was an amazing worker, and that's my father there. So we just erected this in the background. You can see there's a structure, let's get rid of my face, that's in the water as well, holding that net. There's those glasses again. All right, a little bit of gore, so I'll move through these quite quickly. These are all turtles that have been chomped by crocs. Now, I'll tell what's happened here. The turtles will wait in gutters right near the beach to come up, and what they're waiting for is the sun to go down and to become dark, so they're protected. But they wait in the gutters along the beach, and crocs often patrol those gutters looking for turtles. So quite often we'd have turtles like this wash up on the beach, and a lot of the time they were eaten by crocs. All right, beauty. So that's all of our images done. I'm going to go back to a stock image just for a minute while we have a look at these. Now, we were talking about different foods and diets before. All right, see you guys, Jake, Violet, and Roman. Now, this is a turtle skull. If we look in here, there are no teeth in there, but what they have is a modified plate that they use. Now, this one I think might be an Olive Ridley, and this guy, I'm guessing, I'm not certain, he's a bit bigger, is maybe a flatback. The flatbacks are a larger turtle. And here on the front, you can see that the beak is quite sharp. And so imagine that bloke that got bit, that would have hurt quite a lot if he didn't have a jacket on. But they use this to crunch up your shells and your mollusks and those sorts of things as well. So quite sharp, and that's adapted to be able to... Alrighty. So folks, I'm going to hand it over to you. Would love to hear some questions in there. This work was all done in conjunction with Akpol Nangtam Rangers from Arakun. Amazing work by those guys and stuff that we did on their land. So big respect to those guys. Without them, none of this could have happened. Essentially, we saved thousands upon thousands of turtles every year and increased their hatching and mortality rates a lot. So we went from 100% pig predation down to 24%, which was sustainable. It fluxed. So after we got pigs out, dogs came in. Dogs were a problem for a bit, and after we took care of the dogs, the goannas came in. The goannas were quite a problem. Now the rangers are maintaining it below that 30% predation level, which is really amazing. Yes, these are these are very real turtle shells. Good question, John. I actually found these from some of those dead turtles that I just shown, and had a look. I had to piece these back together because they'd actually fallen apart. But these are very real turtle skulls. So you can see in here there is a lot of different bones in there that got glued back together. So really cool. It was like a jigsaw puzzle actually. It took me a long time, a lot of arrow diet. But yeah, really cool to put that together. So I've got a couple of links that I can share with you afterwards. I might show a couple of these videos really quickly now of that island I spoke of earlier called Raine Island. Now, let me just see if I can get this over there. Here we go. So this is that Raine Island. Lots of turtles. Thousands upon thousands of turtles come up here to nest. So you can see they're all green turtles. They save potentially 60,000 individuals in the area in the season. So nesting during the day and the night because there's so many of them. There's quite a lot of problems with things overturning, but their predation rates would be quite high. But these are the nests that are only, I can't remember, 2 to 5% success of the eggs. So really full on. Isn't that amazing? Now I'll see if we can pull up this other one as well that I had saved for everyone. I think this might be the David Attenborough one. So I'll send you the link of that one later. That's a really cool little 6-minute doco by David Attenborough. And then here's a couple of cool videos of turtle hatchlings just swimming around and coming out of the nest that was on YouTube as well. So if anyone has any more questions, please send them through now and I'll answer them. Hey, Jody and boys. So there's 7 types of turtle in the world and we have 6 in Australia. So we have loggerheads, leatherbacks, olive ridleys, flatbacks, greens, hawksbills, and then that one we don't have is called the Kemp's ridley. How beautiful is that? Alrighty folks, we're probably about done there. I've gone a little bit over time again, but geez, there's quite a lot to talk about. Brett! Awesome! Alright folks, so we just had a guy that's joined us, Brett Lees. He was one of the guys that started this project before me. Worked with a mate of mine, Ben Jones. I do not know what olive ridley is like to eat. But Brett was one of the dudes that was up here doing that work before we were. Good on you, Brett. He kickstarted a lot of that with Ben Jones. So shout out to those boys too. Ben Jones, Brett Lees. Great work up there getting some of that stuff done. No worries, Nat. Glad anyone could join. If you want to put through any more questions, send them through. Eventually I'll put this video up and I hope people enjoy that. Let's get that off the screen and get a nice picture of a turtle to finish. Here we go, beauty. Awesome. All right, thanks folks. Take care, big love.